Thank you everyone for joining us for this webinar today. So we're here to talk about Microsoft Cloud Security Tools Unpacked. Hopefully that means you're on the right webinar. With myself, Andy Brown, I'm the product director here at Cocho. I look after all of our go-to-market and product strategy, technical pre-sales, and a few other areas also line into me. I'm delighted to be joined today by Nicole Goya from Microsoft. She's a cybersecurity specialist at Microsoft, brings a lot of obvious expertise and knowledge of the Microsoft stack and the way to engage with Microsoft itself. Great that she could join us today, and she'll be presenting a little for us here. And also our own expert, Alessandro, is going to be taking us through a demonstration of some of the tool sets here in the Microsoft security stack. So introductions, I think we're done. I'll quickly open things up with just a brief introduction to Cocho for those who don't know us. And then Nicole's going to run through some of the common security challenges and how the Microsoft stack aligns to that. And then we're into the meat of the presentation for Alessandro to really kind of bring the technology to life with some of the features in Defender for Cloud, how security posture management is working, and Defender XDR. Got time for questions at the end, so please do pop those in to the Q&A as mentioned. So for those who haven't dealt with us before, we are Cocho, a Microsoft solutions partner with a broad range of specializations that are particularly relevant, I think, for today in terms of the security stack on Microsoft. Proud to be a member of MISA, and we also provide Microsoft verified managed XDR solutions ourselves. So we're able to assist customers with the delivery of this technology as a service as well. In terms of the company, there's about 400 of us. We've got specialists across a number of offices in 3 countries. Nice to say we're growing as an organization, got a great range of customers, all kinds of clients, 650 plus of them, from mid-market all the way up to some of the global brands, including some of the logos that, you know, we're proud to have there at the bottom of the slide. In terms of the way Cocho looks at the world, we look to protect everything across what we class as the core 4 security and management areas. So end user compute, the security stack, platform, and application stacks. Across this, we're able to provide everything from professional services engagement, so you can bring in some of our expertise to assist with engagements, deliverables, including business transformation services, so actual end user adoption and change management. These are all capabilities we have in our armory, all the way through to complete managed services and support services, so we can support you on the technology, we can run the technology on your behalf, and we also have managed security operations as well. So we've got SecOps and managed service, those 2 teams air-gapped and following security best practice in that regard as well. So deep expertise in the organization across a lot of what we'll be touching on today, in particular when we talk about endpoint and service and security. So without that, I think beyond that, I think it's now time, perhaps hand over to Nicole. Nicole, if you could take us through some of your security insights in the Microsoft stack.
Perfect. Thanks, Andy. And just echoing what Andy said when we kicked off, thanks all for joining. So I just wanted to take a few minutes just to set the scene before we dive into the demo in terms of why we're here and a couple of things that we're seeing in the market. So as I'm sure you all know and experience on a day-to-day basis, cloud adoption really continues to stay in the fast lane. But not only that, we also see business leaders increasingly looking to harness the power of AI and embrace a number of cloud native services as well. But what we are seeing as well is these business leaders are wanting to unleash the creativity of their developers. And actually, there's a study by Gartner that said by 2025, 95% of all new initiatives will be cloud native. And many of those initiatives are leveraging the power of AI and rapidly developing new applications within that. We know cloud native technologies empower organizations to build and run a scalable application in a modern dynamic environment, such as public, private, and hybrid clouds. Containers, service meshes, microservices, APIs all exemplify that cloud native approach and what we're seeing across the market. However, as cloud transformation accelerates both innovation and business agility, we know that attackers are actually using it to their advantage as well. So we do see cloud as an increasingly attractive attack surface for hackers. And we know our customers want to know how they can go and manage the complexity created by cloud sprawl and sort of the various tools that they've got across the cloud application lifecycle. And obviously on top of that, it's also looking at cyber risk and adherence to sort of evolving compliance regulations. And that's sort of a continued top of mind consideration that we're seeing when we're speaking to our customers. So what does this mean from a security perspective? So we're often hearing from customers that many security teams, be that security operations, data security, identity, network security, etc., they're spending a significant amount of their time connecting the dots and filling the gaps between various tools that they use. So we often see a lot of customers having one tool for email and collaboration, another for identity, a third for endpoints, etc. So not only are they sort of managing those siloed processes and the various tools, they also tend to lack effective processes and tools that would help them collaborate with each other. And it's really common for security teams to have no interactions with data security or the authentication teams. So as a result, we see a lot of security teams defending in silos and sort of thinking in lists and managing their own area. So while security teams are sort of thinking in silos, we know that attackers are thinking in graphs, and they're actually traversing across the network and moving between the seams of those silo tools and across those different business units and teams within an organization. So just on this slide is sort of a typical ransomware attack. So a user might browse to a website that has malware. They click on a link in a phishing email, which takes them to a malicious site, or they open sort of a malicious attachment that they've been sent via email. Regardless of the action, sort of any of those actions can result in the malware affecting a user's device. From there, we can have a bad actor compromising a user account in various ways. And we also know another sort of common entry point is stolen credentials. And sort of using that to employ a brute force attack to then guess a password. But once an attacker is in, we know that they tend to move laterally to another user with more access and conduct sort of the attack to learn more about your network as they move within that. But ultimately what they're trying to do is compromise the domain so they can remain in the network for as long as they want. And we often see that they are trying to exfiltrate data for financial gain. From a security perspective, we know that we need to continually evolve our security strategies to towards more of a comprehensive approach and build really integrated defences across the entire digital estate. So in terms of what was once, I suppose, a nice to have is no longer optional, and a comprehensive security strategy is really a core way in terms of keeping modern organisations safe. And as part of this, in terms of thinking about sort of the explosion of cloud, is really understanding and knowing what's happening in your cloud environment. So where is your data? How do I respond quickly? Is there an active exploit? How are you sort of understanding that across your organization? And what would you do in certain scenarios? So in terms of sort of managing some of these challenges effectively, we know that customers need to embrace a comprehensive cloud native application protection platform. So a bit of a mouthful, we call it CNAPP for short, that really enables protection across the entire cloud application lifestyle. So that's what we're here to talk about today. So in terms of how Microsoft can help you solve some of these challenges and really ensure that your cloud environment is secure. So what we offer is we offer comprehensive code to runtime security. So starting with secure development, we have native security controls that are infused in existing developer workflows to help build code and applications securely from the get-go. Contextual posture management as well, so helping you prioritize and reduce risk continuously across that entire cloud application lifestyle, and then also protecting all of your clouds, so from Azure to AWS to GCP. It's really protecting against those evolving threats with that near real-time detections for cloud workloads, data, APIs, and a unified XDR experience. Perfect. And this final slide, really, I just wanted to showcase our XDR and SIEM integrated approach. So our vision for SIEM and XDR is really to deliver a single integrated solution to help security operations teams stop attacks and keep their organizations safe ultimately. So it really extends beyond native and hybrid models. And really works to provide depth of automated correlation from XDR integrated with the power of the cloud native SIEM. We also know third-party data and breadth of signal is critical, and that's really why a multi-cloud, multi-platform solution is really integral to our SIEM and XDR vision as a Microsoft business. So I will hand over to Alessandro, who will kick us off into the demo and sort of bring a lot of that to life for you guys.
Thank you. Morning, everyone. Thank you, Nicole. So, as was just mentioned, I'll be running a demo for this. I'm not good with slides. People before me were far better than me with slides. So we'll instead have a look at a lab. We've created a scenario, and as we go through the scenario, we'll try to kind of touch upon the various components that we mentioned here. So we mentioned Defender XDR, we mentioned Defender for Cloud, we mentioned the fact that most tools are now siloed, and trying to put them together is difficult. And once upon a time in the Microsoft world, they were siloed as well. So a lot of names still linger about. You hear Defender for Endpoint, Defender for Office, Defender for Identity. Then you got former names like ATP. How do you bring that all together so they make sense? So rather than creating a slide for that, we thought, let's set up a little lab. The purpose of the lab is showing the full life cycle of a machine. In this case, we picked a Linux machine just to show that we don't like to win easy with Windows Server 2025, which obviously works. So we picked a Linux machine that just got created a couple of days back. And we'll show a flow where without any hands-on, so without any admin going through the usual push a package to onboard an agent, configure the policies. Are the policies configured by Ansible because it's Linux? Are the policies configured by SCCM because it's Windows? And all of that. Is that in Azure? Is that in AWS? Is that in GCP? So completely hands-off. We onboard it to the solution. We have the policies deployed to the solution. And then we have a little simulated attack to show, takes care of the attack. All you have to do is look at the data, look at the correlation of data, and change and adapt. So the next time the attack, rather than being blocked, never starts to begin with. So that's the idea. So from this moment onwards, I'll be sharing my screen and a little note, little asterisk there. This is live. These are not screenshots of the lab. This is actually happening on Microsoft Portal. So if something goes low, it doesn't work, whatever, well, don't shoot the messenger. Nothing I can do about that. So let's start with sharing my browser and we'll have a little tour around. Okay. So, perfect. So I've got a couple of tabs open here. I've got Defender for Cloud here on the left. I've got Defender XDR. I've got Intune, and I'll explain why. And usually, Intune is not thought of something to enable security, but it's a major component, especially due to a technology that exists within Defender XDR that I'll be showcasing in a minute. And now I just got my virtual machine tab here to show the machines that I got built for the XDR lab. So first, kind of a few minutes just to make some clarity. Nicole was mentioning, traditionally, you've got silos, pockets of security technologies, right? So there's something that takes care of your endpoint, something that takes care of your identity, something that takes care of your cloud infrastructure. There's components for everything, and to be honest, most of them are good. The problem is, first, can they communicate? How hard it is to communicate, to make them communicate? Because I guess one of the things that often get overlooked when it comes to security is we always think of the technology. We always think of this product, it's got a detection rate of 99.9%. Oh, this does that, this does that, this AI powered. That's all nice and good. But the product can only be as good as it is ubiquitous. If it's not fully deployed, if it's not fully understood, and even more importantly, if the humans that are behind the tool do not know what they're doing, or do they not have control and visibility of it, then there's no tool in the world that can save you. I'm an analogy man, so I say I can go around with a Kevlar armor from head to toe, and I can just live my life like that. But if I take a gun, point it to my head, and shoot, there's no Kevlar armor that can save me, right? So it's a combination of tools, it's a combination, and the humans behind it, and the processes behind it, more importantly, the processes. So first, let's have a look at Defender XDR, which is this portal here. So I expect most people will have at least seen this in the past. Defender XDR Portal is something that came about not too long back, almost 2 years ago now. And it's the unification of what originally were the siloed products that existed within the Microsoft realm. So what are those siloed products that are not siloed anymore? So originally we had, Microsoft Defender for Endpoint, Microsoft Defender for Office 365, Microsoft Defender for Identity, and Microsoft Defender for Cloud Apps. All these tools still exist. They still got their little component. And if we look at the left-hand side of the portal, we got endpoints, which matches MDE, Microsoft Defender for Endpoints, identities, MDI, Microsoft Defender for Identity, email and collaboration, Office, Cloud Apps, Defender for Cloud Apps. So they still all exist. The challenge they were facing, as we said before, was they were just separate. So what happened was that Microsoft Defender XDR came about. So all these tools came together under one portal, communicating through one API, and all the data from all these various pockets, because every single one of these tools is specialized in something. And the clue is in the name in this case. MDE will do endpoints, MDI will do identities, so your domain controllers, for example, users, email and collaboration, so Defender for Office, it will take care of your SharePoints, of your Teams, of your Exchange, Cloud Apps. Couldn't be any more descriptive than that. It's a CASB, so anything that's a cloud app. But oftentimes, attackers travel, so you need to have this kind of cohesive view of that. That's how Defender XDR came about. It's this one portal where you can check everything in one place, correlate, and have automatic disruption of these potential attacks. Now, if we think of the tools I've just mentioned, I've mentioned endpoints, I mentioned identities, I mentioned Office 365, I mentioned cloud apps. These are all things that really exist at the tenant level, right? Attacks don't only come from that. Actually, they can come from a lot of places. So, okay, we're looking at all of these things. A lot of these things might be reactive. What about something that sits above that? So, my endpoints will exist within a cloud infrastructure or an on-premise infrastructure. So, and this on-premise infrastructure or cloud infrastructure will have virtual networks, it will have NICs, it will have DNS servers, it will have maybe a Kubernetes host, it will have multiple technologies backing this tenant level infrastructure to work, and they need securing as well. So from this, we move to the other portal, which is called Microsoft Defender for Cloud. So Defender for Cloud, again, try not to get lost with the names. We were talking about Defender XDR. Imagine Defender XDR as a box that contains MDE, MDO, MDI, MDA. And that box is your tenant. Your tenant sits within an infrastructure. That infrastructure, bigger box, almost like a matryoshka if you want, is protected by Defender for Cloud. So Defender for Cloud used to be called Azure Threat Protection, Azure ATP. Why the name change? That was quite self-explanatory. Well, the reason for the name change is the fact that that was effectively describing something that's not real anymore. That implied that the only thing that could be protected was Azure itself. Whilst now, the world has changed. We're not in the 90s, we're not in the early noughties anymore. It's very unlikely that you have your set of Windows servers on Azure, and then like back in the days, or you had a Red Hat house and everything was Linux, and that was it. Now you'll have a mix of things. You'll have something sitting in AWS, something sitting in Azure, something on-premise. Some will be infrastructure as a service. Some will be agile and DevOps based, so service that exists for just a couple of hours or a couple of minutes or a couple of days and then they disappear. How do you protect all of that? Defender for Cloud. So Defender for Cloud sits at this infrastructural level. It's what, as Nicole mentioned before, it's Microsoft CNAPP, so Cloud Native Application Protection Platform, for anyone like me who's not too well versed with technical jargon or buzzwords, as I like calling them. And it's made of a couple of components, mostly. So it tries to blend, yet again, we'll go for a few more acronyms, of the CSPM component, so the Cloud Security Posture Management, and the CWP component, so the Cloud Workload Protection. So if we have a look at kind of a more graphical way of looking at this is my tenant here. As you can see, as I mentioned before, at the moment I got 3 Azure subscriptions linked to it. That's because it's my lab tenant. We work for Microsoft. We are a Microsoft partner. We work mostly with Microsoft technologies. But as you can see, you can have Azure, you can have AWS, GCP, Docker Hub, GitLab, DevOps, GitHub, JFrog, and to be honest, more we'll touch upon there. And they're connected through simple entities that you can do up here. But for the time being, for the sake of this example, we'll have a look at what we got here. So I'll pick my MSDN subscription. Still called MSDN, although it's not called MSDN anymore, and I don't think it's been called MSDN for a decade now, but let's go for that. And here we're seeing what I just described. So there's a Cloud Security Posture Management component and a Cloud Workload Protection component. And all of these components got micro components within it. So if we remove all these fancy acronyms, what does that really mean? So Defender for Cloud is looking at the infrastructure. And the first part is the what. So what am I looking at? What is it that I need to know about? Are there things I do not know about? Are there things that are misconfigured? Are there threats I'm not aware of? Are there things that are exposing me to threats that I'm not aware of? That's what the various CSPM do. You got 2 CSPMs, a free one and the Defender CSPM one, which is the kind of the top tier if you want, which is $5 per billable resource per month. By the way, little note, we're not talking licensing here, but this is up to. So it's not what you pay fixed, it depends on consumption. Like everything, Azure-based is consumption-based, so it's not a fixed price. So at the very top, you'll spend, at the very most, you'll spend $5 per resource per month. That's the what. So nice. Now you've discovered what you need to secure, what needs securing. You probably found out resources you didn't even know existed that needed securing, and we'll have a look at that in a minute. Then okay, now I need to fix that because it's all nice and good knowing that I got these things to fix, but now I need to do something about it. That something about it comes with the Cloud Workload Protection, the CWP, which is effectively the how. You've discovered how to what you need to fix, what you need to address. Now here's the tools to fix what you found out. There are multiple tools, and as you look, if you think of Defender XDR that we mentioned before, that was endpoints, identity, Office 365, cloud apps at a tenant level. Here we're looking at infrastructure, so containers, Kubernetes, key vaults, resource manager, databases, hosting servers. So the core, the infrastructural components of your estate. All of these got different pricing and different components. Some require an agent, some don't. But as a rule of thumb, when in an ideal scenario where you got all of these enabled, they will come to your Defender for Cloud, they will do their job, and then you can see your alerts, things like that. When you enable the Defender CSPM, for example, you will see under your inventory all the resources that you need protecting. And some of them don't necessarily didn't think of, because when you look at, for example, at this server here, and I'm pointing at this one because that's the one we use for the demo. We'll show it in a second. NIX01. For context, this is an Ubuntu 24 machine in Asia. Simple as that. Obviously, we always think of the virtual machine when you're protecting that. That's the endpoint. But then what's related to that? There's a network security group that's related to that. There's a public IP address that machine is using. If you're logged in with an Azure user, there's an Azure user. There's a network interface that's used by that machine, in this case here. So there are all these infrastructural components we often forget about, but they can and will be attacked. So we were mentioning before, we need to be ubiquitous. We need to try to, we got all these tools, we got all these areas of attack. Alex, this is a mess. How can I protect all of that? I've got 1,000,001 tools, but making them communicate is impossible. That's how we stop thinking of components. So Defender for Cloud, XDR, MD, MDO, MDI, Defender for Kubernetes. We stop thinking of them as a silo, as a container, as a single identity, but we think them as an ecosystem. And the ecosystem is not limited at security products necessarily, but everything in the Microsoft ecosystem. I'll show in a second. I got my Intune page open here, and I'll show why, because that plays a major role in making sure that this ecosystem works. So let's use the demo as an example then, what I mentioned before. So we are using this machine here, NIX01, Ubuntu server, right? What do we want? Well, obviously, picking a server because nice and easy, virtual machine, technology will understand, but showing everything a Kubernetes DNS attack would be impossible within this. So we pick this as an example. You got this Ubuntu server. What are the things that we always face when we're doing this? Okay, this Ubuntu server has been created. It could be on premise, it could be on AWS, it could be on GCP, it could be on Azure, it could be anywhere. Now we need to onboard it to the agency needs for the various tools. Then we need to configure policies around that. And then obviously we need to make sure that those tools are all doing their job and protecting the machine. Otherwise, not good for much, is it? That usually creates a layer of complication that lowers your security posture. For example, Linux machines. What are you using to create it? Are you spawning it with Terraform? Are you then configuring it via Ansible? Okay, yeah, you might be using that. Are you using Azure technologies to do that? AWS technologies to do that? Windows machine, SCCM. Okay, we can use SCCM. Great. SCCM is not up to date. It's effectively in a managed decline. It will not have everything modern as you would want to. Okay, let's use Intune. Intune support for server is not exactly 100% there, is it? So there's always a challenge there in the process to get this machine onboarded and protected. That's what Microsoft with ecosystem addressed, and quite frankly, it works phenomenally once approached and deployed correctly. So we pick this machine, NIX01, okay, Ubuntu server. We will leverage one of the great components of Defender for Cloud, which is called auto provisioning. So if we go back to my subscription here, and we look at what I've enabled, I have enabled Defender for Servers Plan 1. We can have a conversation on this at another side. There's 1,000,001 things that one could say about this, but for the time being, Defender for Servers Plan 1. This needs, it's effectively the service counterpart of Defender for Endpoints. This needs an agent. It needs Defender. Windows, starting from 1803, got Defender. Linux doesn't. We need to get it there. There's an amazing feature. That feature sits within here. It's been renamed to a simple endpoint protection, but it's still part of the auto provisioning feature. What does that do? That makes sure that when a machine appears within your Defender for Cloud realm, what does that mean? Everything in the inventory that's connected to Defender for Cloud, AWS, on-premise, through Arc, Azure native, and so on and so forth, it will push to this machine an Azure extension to install the Defender agent. So rather than having to connect to the machine or using whatever management tool you do to do that, as soon as it appears here, the mechanism kicks in. Azure, through an Azure policy, pushes this extension, and these extensions onboard it to Defender for Server. And that can be seen. It's not like some flaky thing that you cannot keep track of. So if you go to my virtual machines here now and click on NIX01, And then we have a look at the if operations, I think it is. Extensions and settings here. Extensions and applications. Got lost there. We should see here now an extension called md.linux. There it is, md.linux. So this extension pushed as effectively, if you look at this here, it has onboarded these to Defender for servers, Defender for endpoint if you talk in the Defender XDR language, automatically. So completely hands off. So I've created this VM, I've done nothing, it's onboarded to Defender. Great. Anyone who's used this before will know, okay, onboarding it to Defender for service or Defender for endpoint if it's an endpoint machine. And it's just a small part of the game. Now it needs policies. As we were mentioning before, depending on the operating system, a lot of the times there's different tools, Windows, SCCM, Intune, PowerShell, GPO, Windows, Linux, Ansible, Chef, Puppet, macOS, JAMF, Intune recently, and so on and so forth. Managing and keeping them normalized is usually a nightmare. Well, we can leverage an incredible component, which is getting more and more utilized, but I'm a massive proponent of, to normalize this and make this easy. Again, completely hands-off. The idea is let's take our hands off these processes and let's just deal with what matters, which is Defender XDR configuration management. So Defender XDR configuration management is effectively a front end to configure policies, security policies, or anything related to Defender XDR on your Windows devices, Mac devices, and Linux devices. One pane of glass with no other tool to be used. In the backend, what does it use? If you were to open any of these, one will recognize that these are effectively, actually show you, because I said it was a demo, we will recognize that a lot of these are Intune catalogs. These are Intune templates. So one surely will ask, hang on, we're deploying a server, a Linux server. Intune can't really do that, or rather is not featureful. And how can we do that? That's not enrolled. This machine is not enrolled in Intune. It's just sitting there in Asia. That's through a very clever mechanism that leveraged the Intune backend and just creates a synthetic object in Intune through the MD onboarding, so the thing we saw before, Defender for Cloud Auto Provisioning, and tells Intune, I exist here. I'm not part of your gang, but I exist, and I need to leverage your policies. So at that point, again, okay, we don't want to keep on adding things to this. That's a manual process. I don't want to keep adding machines. Well, we can leverage Intune groups, and more specifically, we can leverage dynamic memberships. So if I look at a group that I created here, I called it very creatively Linux MDE managed. And if I look at the dynamic membership rule here that I created for it, it's very simple. We're saying that the management type is Microsoft Sense. So effectively MDE, right? It's what the fact that now it's been onboarded by Defender for Cloud. XDR is aware of that. We can now pick this up as managed by MDE. And the device OS type of Linux, because we're filtering out by Linux. So very simple query. And we're now capturing these devices, and we can see that this device exists. And if we go in members, we see Nixon 1. This was another test. Forget about that. SRV, Ubuntu, MD, Insiderfast. It's here. This machine is not Intune enrolled. It's a server. It's a Linux server. But it's getting picked up by the Intune mechanism through this synthetic object. What does that mean? It means that we can now assign policies that exist for either Windows, Mac, or Linux through Defender XDR configuration management to that machine. So if I look at my, I didn't want to open that, there we go. If I look at my AV policy here, I call it AV policy, you can call it whatever. I've created a best practice policy for Linux devices. So we've got cloud delivered protection, diagnostic data collection, CloudBlock level set to high, so I understand that all the things you normally do, right? We got real-time enforcement level protection, we got network protection, scanning of archives, and so on and so forth. This is a policy that, if we look at the next step, it's assigned to Linux MD managed, that group that's capturing all the devices that created this synthetic object, meaning a device that came from Defender for Cloud, hands off, got onboarded to Defender, Defender created this object. Intune can pick up on this object, say, hey, okay, I'll let you use my catalog. Go there. We created a policy in Defender XDR configuration management, the one we're looking at right now. We assign this, and now, again, with it completely hands off at this point, the machine gets its policies. So if we now go to Assets and Devices, and we click on NICS 01, and we click on the security policies, we can now see that the AV policy, so first thing first, sorry, I forgot an important thing. As you notice, the Defender for Cloud onboarded machine is now appearing in the Defender XDR portal. It's been seen, it's been onboarded successfully, it's been recognized, the data has been shared. And now Defender XDR is taking over and configuring those policies. We got the automated process there that says anything that falls within the dynamic membership group, pick it up and give it this policy if it's a Linux machine, which it did. So we click here, and you can see that all the components that we shared before in the AV policies are now applied to this machine. This is completely hands-off. If I were to spin up 100 VMs now, whether they are Linux, Windows, or whatnot, without doing anything, you get to this stage. So you get onboarded, data shared with XDR, policies are configured by XDR, Intune's got a synthetic object to capture them all. Completely hands-off, we got to a place where this server is now in a far better place than it was at the moment of creation, and that happened in near real time. There's a caveat to that, like everything, it cannot be real time, there can be delays, but as a rule of thumb, that's how it works. So at this point, the question is, oh, that's good, we got it here, I can see it's here. And now because of that, as we said before, Defender XDR has got these kind of universal access, if you want. It shares data. And the data puts together things from NDO, NDI, ND, Defender for Cloud, because it comes in. If you want, you can then share with Sentinel, as I said, as a unified CM solution as well. What does that mean? We got this machine onboarded, we got this machine protected. Well, now we need to test that protection, right? So for the sake of this, I haven't taken and popped on an effective virus. I've used an ICAR test, but it still shows the flow. So I'll stop sharing for a moment and I'll actually share my terminal so you can see the machine, and we'll go to Windows. Where is it? There we go. Now, forget for a moment the extremely safe and not explicative at all I am admin user. Again, this is a test. I'm just trying to make it as obvious as possible. Normally, I wouldn't recommend that naming convention, but we're on this Ubuntu machine. And on this Ubuntu machine yesterday, I've run an ICAR test. So if I do a MD threat list, so in the ATP threat list, we can see what got blocked here. And I ran 2. So if you can see here, after I've done it, it's picked up, the AV engine has picked up physically on the machine, hey, there's a virus, and this happened at this time. So I've quarantined it. I then again a few minutes later, and hey, there's a virus in quarantine. And after a few minutes later, like little caveat, I've been lazy here, and I haven't updated the timing from UCT to BST. So at the moment, this machine is running on UTC time. So when we go to the portal, you'll see things in BST. So it would be a shift of an hour. But set this in your mind: 1349.56 and 1402, which is effectively 1459 and 1502. So we go back to our portals now. Share. Let me pick the right one. Yeah. So if we now go back to our Defender for Cloud, because that's how this machine got onboarded, right? That's how it all started. So Defender for Cloud, if we look at our security alerts, let me take out this filter. We can see those 2 ICAR tests. So 250, 303, as we said, delayed by an hour, not because the tool is delayed, because I'm lazy and haven't updated the timing. So effectively near real time, we can see them here. That's brilliant. You can see them here, they've been dealt with. But this, again, another tool. Most of your SOC team will not sit in Defender for Cloud. Defender for Cloud is something that's used by admins, infrastructure admins, and so on and so forth. Well, worry not, because as we said, this is an ecosystem now. So if we switch to Defender XDR, where your SOC actually exists, lives, and work, and you go to alerts, we'll now see that that happened here. It's here, it's been communicated. It happened elsewhere, but it's been communicated. And we can see, because this is enriched, it's not limited by the infrastructural plane. It's not just looking at what Defender for Cloud can read. It can read other levels. It can read at the endpoint level, at the office level, at the cloud apps level. It can put it all together. So we can have a look, and this can tell me exactly that at this time, this command was run from admin, not very clever admin in this case. They picked up this file, and this was picked up as a malware, so it was prevented. As you notice, this is mentioned as an informational thing, informational threat. Why is that? It's been dealt with. Effectively, status prevented. This got picked up, it's got registered, you got all the data in the word, but really, you never got to see it. It got picked up, it got blocked. That's all you need to know. Then that very careless admin user tried again. And if you, as you noticed, this time tried with a slight variation of the occur command. Let's see if we pick the ICAR file from elsewhere, if it makes any difference. No, Defender still picked it up. And you can see we can access the command it was run as and all the rest. So we can then look at this and look at the recommendations. So what can we do to prevent this in the future to make it better, and so on and so forth? We can look at the timeline. We can look at the incidents related to it. So we can look at pretty much everything you want, but this is now empowered by the fact that all the data assets came together. And now, mind you, this is a very, 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 very simple, threat in the sense that it's an ICAR test, right? But if you look at the incident that was created off the back of that alert, again, that started from Defender for Cloud, it's got a map here. And that map is showing us the communication from Nix01 to icar.com.txt. We can see the assets that were involved in this. Now let's do a little effort of imagination here. This was simple. It was a simple curl script pulling the ICAR on the local machine, which was picked up and prevented from a local admin on my machine. It's not an entry user or anything of the sorts. But let's assume for a moment that rather than being the way I've done it, this came from a mail. The mail was joeblogs@contoso.com, and the user Alex Jones clicked on it. Now, these assets here wouldn't be just the device, it would be the user Alex Jones, it would be the mailbox Joe Blogs, and that schema, that attack story that we're creating would have all of that combined. So now you know, yes, the threat might have been a virus, this ICAR test, which is physically on the endpoint. But this came from outside, came from a mail. Was this Joe Blog an internal person? Maybe it was, maybe it wasn't. You can go back and see how the incident was created. And at that point, you can put it together and put up action and create actions, amend your policies or create actions, tools, whatever it is that you want to make sure that in the future, rather than reacting to this threat, we never deal with it again. Mind you, as I just shown here, we didn't have to deal with it. It just got dealt with. And this is, I want to summarize it, a Linux machine that got automatically onboarded to Defender for Servers, automatically configured by Defender XDR. A threat happened on it, and it was automatically dealt with. So throughout all this process, the birth of the machine and the machine getting attacked, everything in between was completely hands-off. There was no admin having to configure things. You set it up once, you set up the infrastructure, you set up the flow, then it works. Then that's its job. So what's the next step? The next step is finding out how's your company doing. So effectively, okay, we got this thing, great. God knows how many times this happened and I didn't know. Well, you can know. there's a tool called Exposure Management, a fairly new tool. It doesn't replace what used to be Secure Score, in the sense that Secure Score is still here. Secure Score was almost like a gamified version to summarize how well you're doing, depending on the various components, so identity, data, device, and apps, and it can tell, and it give you a recommendation on how to improve these categories, how to make it better so that next time it doesn't happen. So it's telling me, for example, that I haven't got MFA for all my users here because this is my lab test and I've been lazy, or that I'm not blocking persistent through WMI event subscriptions. This is an ASR rule, by the way. So it's looking at Azure, it's looking at Entra, it's looking at Defender for Endpoint, it's looking at all the components. And if we go to the exposure management as a whole thing, we can see all the metrics, as I said, coming together. So your total assets, your total identity, your total clouds, your total cloud apps. Now, this is a bit bare bone because it was a test that was built yesterday, as you can imagine, just to showcase this. But imagine it with your data. So what's your SaaS security? What's your CIS compliance? And so on and so forth, with actions and suggestions to remediate it. So I appreciate it was extremely high level, but that's what we can do within half-hour presentation. I hope it was clear enough. The idea is you start from a machine, you do nothing, everything gets configured, everything gets done as you want it, you get attacked, you get protected. What your SOC team can now do is looking at all the data that create that, all the data that's now unified, have a look at that and improve your practices and process so the next time it doesn't even get to be an attack. Thank you.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much, Alessandro. Really, really good. Yeah, lovely to go through kind of the journey of the creation of something all the way through to an attack happening and actually seeing the remediation all sorted as well. So we've now reached the point where we have a few minutes left for some Q&A. So please do add those in to the Q&A panel. If there's anything you've got questions on across the topics we've obviously covered at a fairly high level today. So if you've got something a little bit more detailed, I think there's a couple of questions that are kind of, I think, coming from a similar angle. So Alessandro, the differences between doing what you just demonstrated and doing it in Intune, where is it recommended that you actually do this work?
Okay, so that's a great question. So as I mentioned before, Intune is the backend for this. So what's getting used is Intune technology to deploy this. Intune is limited, if you want, by the fact that a machine has to be Intune enrolled, hybrid joined. It has to be, effectively, Intune has to be aware of it. Defender XDR configuration management adds this extra option where through a synthetic object that's created in Intune, effectively a little flag that goes, I'm here too. It can now leverage the Intune catalog without being necessarily Intune enrolled or hybrid joined. So that's the advantage of it from a technical perspective. From a operational and process perspective, I guess I can answer that with a question. Does your SOC team usually access Intune? I very much doubt so. Usually SOC doesn't touch Intune, doesn't look at that. And yet they are involved with the decision and the policy there should be made on the machine. They're usually the people who decide what should go on that. It gives them one pane of glass where they can look at, as I said, the threat, the alerts, the incidents, the exposure overview, the secure score, and the policies ending up on the machine if they're given the appropriate RBAC rights to do that. That goes without saying. So they can look at the policy. They can look at the policy regardless of the operating system. So that's the advantage. The SOC can see that because the SOC cannot access Intune most of the times, but it can access Defender XDR. And if the machine is not Intune native or Intune enrolled, or you can leverage it. You can do it there. As I said, server integration, as you're well aware, in Intune is it's iffy, isn't it? The Defender XDR component works brilliantly. It uses the same technology in the backend, but you can use all those catalogs. In terms of best practice, because I saw that popping at the bottom of the question, the recommended method. If you create a policy in Intune, so if I were to create a policy now called test on Intune in my Intune portal, it will appear on my Defender XDR configuration management page. Likewise, if I create one there, it will appear in Intune. So as I said, the backend is the same, but One is accessed by a certain team, one is not, and one enables you to manage machines that otherwise you wouldn't be able to manage. So for the sake of that kind of smooth flow of everything Defender in one place and hands off, if you can, Defender XDR configuration management is the way to go.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Kind of a follow-on to that. So the question here about Intune, is Intune EDR integrated with Defender for Cloud or XDR?
Okay, that's $1 million question, probably more than a million. Let's go billion now, inflation and all of that. So we know that Microsoft is working towards this unified XDR experience that brings in, as Nicole mentioned, XDR, SIEM, and we know from TechNet blogs rather than official announcements by it's happening, the Defender for Cloud it's already an integrated component. We saw that. They communicate very tightly. Does it appear physically on the Defender XDR pages of right now? No, it doesn't. Will it? To an extent, probably will, in the sense that you'll have visibility of what happened and came from there. Let's not forget that they are separate components for a reason, at least from an infrastructural perspective. One sits on the cloud while one sits on the tenant, and certain things shouldn't be seen necessarily by the SOC. Some things do belong to infrastructure. So yes, they work together. They are completely integrated. What I didn't show here was the integration with Sentinel. Otherwise, this would have been a 5 days workshop. But there's the extra step where it starts from Defender for Cloud, gets it to XDR, and then you want to reach even more, push it up to Sentinel, and then you got the SIEM bit. So it is all integrated. It is all one smooth flow. The API in the background is the same. At the moment, the Defender for Cloud overview doesn't appear in the Defender XDR portal, but every bit of data that you see there does. So if as I've shown before, the alert that appeared in Defender for Cloud, we saw the same thing actually enriched within Defender XDR. So in a way, yes, it is integrated. Yes. Will they ever merge? It's not for me to answer.
Fair enough. I think that's a good answer, and thank you. Well, look, I think that's brought us to the end of the Q&A session. So thank you to those who posted the questions there. Look, I think we're at the end of the webinar now. So in terms of next steps, it would be great if you wanted to know more about this. Probably one of the things we would recommend is perhaps book a cloud security discovery call with us. So we can basically set up a 1-hour call with one of our pre-sales consultants, and the idea here is really to get into the weeds of your environment, your requirements, and find out what we can do to help you. Coach Out, we're approved to deliver a range of potentially Microsoft funded engagements, and they're designed to really help you assess the value of Microsoft security solutions across the organization, and that's all of the Defender products, Sentinel, and a lot more. So look, please do reach out and get in touch if that's something you're interested in. I'm sure our sales team may well be getting in touch with you if you've attended the webinar, just to get some feedback. And also don't forget to speak directly with your Microsoft account team. They're there to help you as well. And indeed, that's one of the reasons why they're here today, to support us on this webinar. So look, thank you very much for taking time to go through that. Thanks very much to our presenters for going through that. Brilliant demonstration, great content. And yeah, we'll speak to you soon. Thank you.